The man in the dusty hoodie, it was a cloudy morning in Los Angeles, the kind that felt like something big was about to happen. The streets were still wet from last night's rain, and the city buzzed with its usual energy. Cars honking, dogs barking, people rushing with coffee in hand. Somewhere on Ventura Boulevard, tucked between a high-end bakery and a boutique spa, stood a luxury car dealership known for selling the kind of cars that only appeared in music videos or behind velvet ropes. Chrome exotics lined the glossy windows, each of them polished like diamonds, reflecting the ambitions of everyone who walked by. This place wasn't just about cars. It was about power, image, and class. Inside, everything gleamed. The tiles were so clean you could see your future in them. The walls were decorated with framed photos of celebrities, CEOs, and international athletes, all smiling next to their new rides. Salesmen in tailored suits drifted through the space like sharks in still water, their eyes scanning for the next big commission. And behind the front desk stood a man named Vince, the dealership manager, known for being efficient, sharp, and ruthlessly selective about who he served. At exactly 10:03 a.m., the door opened with a soft chime, and in walked a man whose presence didn't match the surroundings. His hoodie was worn at the elbows, a light layer of dust clung to his boots, and a few strands of hair escaped from under his baseball cap. He didn't walk in with swagger or noise. Instead, he entered quietly, his eyes moving slowly across the cars like someone searching for a memory. No one recognized him, and that was the first mistake. Vince glanced up from his laptop and narrowed his eyes at the man. Without a greeting, he stepped around the desk and intercepted him halfway through the showroom. "Can I help you?" Vince asked, voice tight, eyes scanning the hoodie with judgment. "Just looking," the man replied calmly, voice deep and soft. Vince folded his arms. "We don't allow loitering. If you're not here to buy, I'll have to ask you to leave." The man looked at him, a trace of pain behind his calm eyes. "I didn't say I wasn't here to buy," Vince snorted. "Look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know who can afford these cars and who can't. And with all due respect, you don't exactly look like someone who can." A few other salesmen chuckled quietly from the side, pretending to inspect a dashboard as they eavesdropped. The man gave a small nod. He wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. Just disappointed. "That's a shame," he murmured. "Because I actually like this one." He pointed toward a black Aston Martin with red trim. Vince stepped in front of him, blocking the path. "That car starts at $300,000, and even the paperwork takes a certain level of sophistication." The man didn't answer. He simply turned and walked toward the door, not with shame, but with a kind of quiet dignity that made even the janitor pause mid-mop. But Vince had already turned his back, smug in his own judgment. Outside, the man took off his cap and let the cool wind brush through his hair. A nearby woman walking her dog slowed down and did a double take. "Wait, are you?" she started. The man smiled gently. "Shh," he said, putting a finger to his lips. She covered her mouth, stunned. "I love your movies," she whispered, her voice full of awe. He gave her a nod and a warm smile, then walked across the street to a nearby bench. He sat there for a while, watching the dealership through the window, just quietly. He wasn't watching the cars. He was watching the people. He saw how they treated others, how they moved, how they judged. And in his pocket, his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. "Sir, your company's audit team just arrived at the dealership. Want me to proceed?" He stared at the screen for a moment before typing back one word. "Yes," because the man in the dusty hoodie wasn't just anybody. He was Keanu Reeves. And that dealership, he owned it, but he didn't walk in that morning to flaunt his power or play games. He walked in dressed as a regular man because he wanted to see something. He wanted to see how his staff treated people when they thought no one important was watching. Back inside, Vince leaned over to one of his top salesmen. "Another one of those Hollywood weirdos trying to get attention," he muttered. "Bet he posts some sob story online now." Before the salesman could reply, A sleek black Escalade pulled up in front of the dealership. 3 people in suits stepped out, one of them holding a leather-bound folder. They entered briskly and asked for the manager. "That's me," Vince said, confused. "Good," said the woman at the front. "We're from Reeves Holdings. We're conducting a surprise compliance and performance evaluation today." Vince blinked. "I wasn't notified of this." "You weren't supposed to be," she said coldly. A thick silence fell over the room as everyone paused to listen. The other salesmen looked at each other nervously, unsure what was happening. The woman continued, "We've already begun reviewing footage from the last hour. We'll be conducting interviews next." Vince's voice trembled slightly. "Wait, Reeves Holdings?" "Yes," she said, as in Keanu Reeves. Just then the door opened again. The man in the hoodie walked back in, this time with no cap and no need to hide. Every jaw in the room dropped. Keanu Reeves stood in the center of the showroom, his expression unreadable. The silence was so thick you could hear the click of his boots against the polished tile. Vince stammered, Mr. Reeves, I didn't know it was you." "That's the point," Keanu said quietly. "You're not supposed to know because respect shouldn't depend on identity." His words weren't loud. They didn't have to be. They hit like thunder because they were spoken with calm truth. The audit team stepped aside, allowing Keanu to walk through his own dealership. He paused at the Aston Martin, the one he'd tried to see earlier. Then he looked at Vince. "You said this car needed a certain level of sophistication," he said. "But I think what this place really needs is a new manager." Vince's face went pale. "You're firing me?" he whispered. Keanu didn't raise his voice. He just nodded once. "Effective immediately," said the woman from the audit team, handing Vince a formal letter. "Your actions this morning were caught, on multiple cameras, and they speak for themselves." Vince stood frozen, disbelief and shame flooding his face. The silence was broken only by the footsteps of security escorting him gently to the side, but the story didn't end there. Keanu turned to the remaining staff, his voice calm but firm. "I built this company with one idea in mind: kindness. It doesn't matter how someone looks when they walk through that door. You treat them with dignity, because you never know their story." Outside, people had begun to gather, drawn by whispers and social media posts. Phones came out, heads turned, and Keanu Reeves, the man known for his humility and quiet power, stood at the center, not as a movie star, but as a man who expected better from the world around him. And as the sun finally broke through the gray clouds, lighting up the showroom like a spotlight from the heavens, something changed in the air. But the real storm was still coming, because what Keanu discovered next would shake the entire foundation of everything he built. The files in the back room, after the crowd outside slowly dispersed and the dealership returned to an uneasy quiet. Keanu remained inside, not as a celebrity or owner, but as a silent observer. He stood near the glass doors, arms crossed, his eyes following the rhythm of the staff as they nervously resumed their duties. Every person in that building now walked with an air of caution, as if each breath might be their last in that job. Yet Keanu wasn't looking for fear. He was looking for change. His actions were never driven by ego. He had built this place as a symbol, a message that anyone with vision, hard work, and respect could walk in and feel seen. Now he felt that vision had cracked, and it wasn't just about one disrespectful manager. It ran deeper, and he was going to find out how deep. The woman from the audit team named Alina approached him with a quiet confidence. She had worked closely with Keanu's philanthropic ventures for years and knew his methods well. Without speaking, she handed him a digital tablet with a folder labeled Internal Complaints, Confidential. He took the tablet, tapped it open, and began scrolling. Each entry revealed a different story. Anonymous employees describing how management ignored disabled clients, how female customers were talked over during transactions, and how homeless veterans who came in just to look were mocked behind closed doors. Keanu's jaw clenched slightly as he read, but he stayed composed. Emotions wouldn't fix this, action would. He looked up. "I need to see the back room," he said quietly. Alina gave a nod, and together they walked toward a door marked Employees Only. As they entered, the sleek showroom feel disappeared. Gone were the marble floors and modern lighting. Here, the walls were dull, the lighting flickered in places, and the filing cabinets were old and crammed full. It was a world hidden from the polished surface of the dealership, forgotten and ignored. A middle-aged employee named Daryl, who had been with the dealership since the very beginning, stood there sorting service documents. His eyes widened when he saw Keanu. "Mr. Reeves, I didn't know you were coming today," Daryl said quickly, wiping his hands on his shirt. Keanu nodded gently. "You've been here a long time, haven't you?" "Yes, sir. 14 years. Before the company went corporate." Keanu's gaze softened. "Tell me something. What happened after we expanded? What changed in here?" Daryl paused. He looked down at the pile of service records in his hands, and for a moment, it seemed like he wasn't going to answer. But then, with a slow breath, he set the papers down and looked up. "The heart left," he said. "We used to care about people. We knew the names of our regulars. We had a jar on the counter where folks dropped coins to help kids in the neighborhood get bicycles. But when the new management came in, it turned into numbers, quotas, profits. They started hiring managers from out of state who didn't care about the community, didn't care about the people." Keanu listened intently, nodding. "Why didn't anyone say anything?" "Some of us did," Daryl replied. "But they called it complaining, or being unproductive. A few of the older team members were let go for being too friendly with customers." A silence hung in the air. Keanu ran his fingers along the edge of a nearby cabinet, dust clinging to his hand. The whole place felt like a forgotten attic, full of secrets. He turned to Alina. "What about surveillance?" "We checked the cameras this morning," she said. "Some of the footage from last week was erased." "Erased?" Keanu asked, brows narrowing. "Yes," she replied. "Intentionally, mostly during peak hours, and always when the previous manager Vince was in charge." Keanu stood in thought for a moment. This wasn't just about one arrogant moment on the showroom floor. This was a cultural failure, a betrayal of the mission he started with. He had built his empire not on flash but on compassion. He wanted his businesses to be different, to be symbols of something better in a world growing colder by the day. He turned to Daryl. "Is there anything else you think I should know?" Daryl hesitated again, then walked over to a filing drawer labeled Miscellaneous Internal. He pulled out a sealed envelope, slightly yellowed at the edges. "I kept this," he said, handing it to Keanu. "One of the newer employees, a girl named Maya, wrote this. She was let go just 3 months after being hired. This letter was never delivered. They told her she wasn't a good fit because she was too emotional. But she left this with me, asked me to pass it along to someone who actually cared." Keanu opened the envelope and pulled out a folded page. The handwriting was neat but shaky, the ink slightly smudged as if from tears. He read, "Dear Mr. Reeves, I know you'll probably never read this, but I had to try. I joined this dealership because I believed in what you stood for. I saw the interviews where you talked about kindness, about making your companies more human. But the truth is, inside this building, people are suffering. Customers are humiliated based on how they look. Employees are belittled if they speak out. I tried to stand up for a disabled man who came in looking for a used SUV for his son's birthday, and I was told I was wasting company time. They laughed at him. I tried to help a single mother get financing, and I got written up for sentimentality. I don't want to be part of a company that forgets its soul. I wanted to believe in you. I hope one day this letter finds you, sincerely." Keanu folded the letter slowly, holding it like a piece of something fragile. His face remained calm, but a storm had gathered behind his eyes. This was no longer about a lesson for his staff. It was about reclaiming the soul of a place that was supposed to be more than just a dealership. It was supposed to be a haven, a place where people were treated with dignity, regardless of their wallet, accent, or clothes. He turned to Alina. "I want every employee interviewed again, privately. I want a report on every firing in the last 2 years. And I want Maya found." Alina nodded. "I'll get started." As they left the back room, Keanu walked through the dealership again, this time looking at it through different eyes. He saw more than luxury cars and spotless floors. He saw the cracks, the stories hidden behind polite smiles, the unseen hands scrubbing floors or arranging keys behind desks. He approached the front desk where a young receptionist named Claire sat nervously fidgeting. "Hi," Keanu said softly. "I'm not here to scare you." She looked up, startled, but quickly nodded. "Of course, sir. I just want to know, when someone like me walks in looking like I did this morning, what are you told to do?" She bit her lip, hesitated, then said, "We're told to alert the manager, unless the person is clearly wealthy." "Clearly wealthy?" Keanu repeated. "Yes," Claire said. "Vince used to say if they don't smell like money, they don't belong in the room." Keanu's heart sank. The dealership had become something he never intended. And as he looked around the space, at the glossy cars, the scared employees, the air of silent regret, he knew something had to change. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. And then, just as he was about to speak, a man in a suit rushed in through the front doors. He was out of breath, holding a stack of files. "Mr. Reeves," he called out, "you're going to want to see this. It's about Vince and the accounts." Keanu turned sharply, his instincts now on full alert. "What about the accounts?" he asked. The man held up a folder. "Some of the sales weren't recorded. And there's money, missing, a lot of it. And just like that, the story took a darker turn." The missing millions Keanu Reeves stood in the center of his own dealership, silent and still, as the man in the suit handed him a thick folder of documents. The weight of the folder was nothing, compared to the weight settling in his chest. This wasn't just about unkind treatment anymore. This was fraud, betrayal. Someone he trusted had reached into the foundation of his dream and chipped away at it for personal gain. The man who delivered the folder was Oliver, the dealership's newly appointed head of financial compliance. He had been with Reeves Holdings for less than a year, quietly overseeing books from afar, but the sudden events of the day had forced him to take a deeper dive into the dealership's internal accounts. Keanu opened the folder, scanning the pages. Quickly, his sharp mind immediately picking up patterns. The numbers didn't lie. Repeated discrepancies appeared between actual vehicle sales and the reported revenue. Some transactions had double entries, while others didn't show up at all. Entire cash payments were unaccounted for. It was all carefully done, spread out over time, hidden beneath layers of minor corrections and clerical errors. Whoever had done this was experienced, confident, and arrogant enough to think they'd never be caught. "How much is missing?" Keanu asked, his voice calm but tight with tension. Oliver took a breath before responding. "Our preliminary review shows nearly $3.2 million misappropriated over the past 19 months, all during Vince's management." The number rang in the air like a thunderclap. Keanu closed the folder slowly, a storm churning inside him. $3.2 million wasn't just money. It was trust. It was dreams. It was potential scholarships, community investments, and support programs he had planned through this very business, stolen, not just from him, but from everyone who believed in what he stood for. Alina approached, having just returned from a round of interviews. Her expression was unreadable but serious. "You should hear what some of the employees are saying," she said. "Vince not only manipulated the books, he bullied the sales team into silence, threatened to fire anyone who questioned his numbers. He even held back commissions from those who didn't follow his script." Keanu felt something twist inside his stomach. He had been generous with his business leaders, always giving them autonomy and freedom to lead with compassion and integrity. But Vince had taken that freedom and twisted it into power, then used that power to exploit both employees and customers alike. He walked slowly across the showroom, past the cars that had once excited him, past the photo wall of past clients, and stopped at a large window looking out into the city. His reflection stared back at him. Not the famous actor, not the billionaire philanthropist, but a man who had built something with love, and now had to face the hard truth that it had been poisoned under his own watch. "We need a full forensic audit," he said, turning to Alina and Oliver. "Every department, every record. And I want to personally meet the customers who were scammed. We owe them that much." Oliver nodded immediately and pulled out his phone to begin scheduling. Alina stepped closer. "What about the employees still working here?" she asked. Some of them were forced to stay silent. A few are still scared. Keanu turned back to the room, his eyes scanning every corner. "Then it's time to give them a voice," he said. "Hold a meeting. I'll speak to all of them. Today." Within 30 minutes, every employee, mechanics, front desk workers, janitors, sales staff, had gathered in the back parking lot under a large white tent. It was rare to see everyone together in one place, and the energy was tense and uncertain. Many were still in uniform. Others had grease-stained hands and tired eyes. Whispers passed between them like nervous birds fluttering between wires, and then Keanu stepped forward, not from behind a curtain or podium, but right into the circle with them like an equal, like one of them. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't come with a prepared speech. He just looked each of them in the eyes slowly and began. "I built this dealership not just to sell cars," he said, his voice carrying through the silence, "but to create something different, a place where respect came first, where no one was judged by their shoes or their skin or the zeros in their bank account. But I see now that somewhere along the way, we lost that, and I didn't catch it in time." He paused. No one interrupted. "You were lied to, manipulated. Some of you were punished for doing the right thing, and I'm sorry, truly, because that means I failed you. But starting today, we fix it, together." A murmur moved through the crowd, and slowly, heads nodded. The tension began to shift into something else. Hope. For the first time in years, many of them felt heard, seen, valued, and then Keanu did something unexpected. He pulled out Maya's letter and read it aloud, word for word. No theatrics, just her truth, ringing clear and unfiltered. When he finished, he looked up. "We're going to find Maya," he said, "and we're going to bring her back." Later, that afternoon, Keanu sat in his office, one he hadn't used in a long time, sifting through employee files and old client records. He called his outreach team and gave them one mission: find every person who had been turned away or disrespected at the dealership and invite them back for a private conversation. No cameras, no press, just real talk, real listening. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden light through the windows, a knock came at the door. It was Claire, the young receptionist. Her eyes were red, but she stood with resolve. "Sir," she said softly, "I found something. It's Maya's emergency contact. She listed a friend, Tasha. She works at a bookstore on Sunset Boulevard." Keanu rose immediately. "Get the car ready," he said. "I want to meet her." Within the hour, Keanu was standing inside a cozy, independent bookstore, where the scent of old paper and roasted coffee filled the air. A young woman at the counter looked up as he entered, and her eyes widened in disbelief. You're Keanu Reeves," she said, voice trembling. He nodded with a kind smile. "I'm looking for Tasha." "That's me," she said. Stepping forward, he pulled out Maya's letter and held it gently. "I'm trying to find your friend. I read this, and I need to make things right." Tasha's face changed. Emotion flooded her expression as she reached out and took the letter from his hand. "I haven't seen Maya in months," she said softly. "She was so crushed when she left. They broke her spirit. Do you know where she went?" "She moved in with her aunt in Bakersfield," Tasha said. "I can give you the address, but she doesn't believe in hope anymore. Not after what happened." Keanu nodded slowly. "Then it's time to show her there's still hope." And as he left the bookstore, letter in hand and resolve in his heart, he didn't know what kind of state Maya would be in, or whether she'd even agree to see him. But one thing was certain: the journey to rebuild what had been broken had just begun, and he was ready to face every truth, no matter how painful. Because kindness, once lost, must be fought for, and Keanu Reeves was ready for that fight. Tutu. Girl who stopped believing. The highway stretched for miles like a ribbon of faded dreams, winding through the golden brown fields that led to Bakersfield. The city, far less glamorous than Los Angeles, held a kind of quiet dignity, a place where people worked hard and rarely complained. The sun hung low as Keanu sat in the back seat of a black SUV, his thoughts heavy as they drove past worn-down gas stations, farm supply stores, and weathered motels. In his lap lay Maya's letter, now creased at the folds from being read again and again. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was a symbol of every person who had ever been dismissed, overlooked, or crushed under the weight of someone else's pride. And he knew, deep in his bones, that until he faced her, he hadn't truly faced the damage his dealership had allowed. The SUV pulled up to a modest house at the edge of a quiet residential block. It had a chain-link fence, a crooked mailbox, and a rusted swing set in the yard. A woman in her 60s, wearing a blue apron and wiping her hands on a towel, stepped onto the porch. She looked cautious at first, narrowing her eyes at the unfamiliar vehicle. But when Keanu stepped out and approached her slowly, her expression changed from suspicion to confusion. "Are you who I think you are?" she asked. Keanu offered a soft smile. "My name is Keanu. I believe Maya lives here. With you." The woman's face tensed. She hesitated, gripping the towel in her hand a little tighter. "She's here. But she's not the same. She barely talks anymore. Spends most of her time sketching or walking by herself. I don't know what happened to her in that place, but it broke something inside." Keanu's heart dropped a little more at those words. "May I speak to her?" The woman gave a slow nod. "I'll see if she'll come out, but no promises." As she disappeared inside, Keanu stood on the porch, staring at the swing set. It creaked gently in the breeze, and for a moment he imagined a young Maya sitting there once, full of hope, maybe dreaming about making a difference in the world. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The door creaked open again, and from behind the screen stepped Maya. She looked thinner than in her employee photo. Her eyes were tired, her posture wary. She didn't step outside fully, just stayed behind the screen door, gripping the frame like a shield. "You came all this way," she said quietly, her voice like brittle glass. "I did," Keanu replied, "because your words mattered. They still do." Maya looked down. "They didn't matter back then. They got me fired." "They mattered more than you know," he said, reaching into his coat and holding up the folded letter. "They changed everything." She opened the door slowly, but didn't step closer. "Why now? Why after all this time?" Keanu took a breath. "Because I needed to see the truth for myself. And the truth is, we failed you. We failed a lot of people. But your letter helped open my eyes. You saw what others ignored. You spoke up when it wasn't safe. And I let a man like Vince silence voices like yours." A long silence hung between them. The sky above had begun to shift, turning soft with evening clouds. Maya stepped out fully now, walking onto the porch barefoot. "I wanted to believe in what that place stood for," she said. "You talked about kindness like it was a mission, like we were building something real. But inside it was cold, cruel. And when I tried to care, they said I wasn't professional." Keanu nodded, taking every word like a blow to the chest. "I'm not here to erase what happened. I'm here to make it right." "How?" she asked bitterly. "You can't just fix what they did to me." "No," he admitted. "But maybe you can help me fix what's still broken." Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Come back," he said. "Not as an employee, as a partner. Help rebuild the culture. Help me lead with the values you tried to protect. I want to create a training program based on empathy, inclusivity, humanity. And I want you to design it." Maya looked away, tears welling up despite her resistance. She had spent so long convincing herself that hope was dangerous, that good people always lost. But here he was, offering her a chance not just to return, but to lead, to be heard, to turn pain into purpose. "Do I get to fire people this time?" she asked, a tiny, half-joking smile curling her lips. Keanu smiled back. Only the ones who deserve it. They both laughed, and the sound was warm and healing. The screen door behind them creaked again as her aunt peeked out with cautious eyes, but Maya waved her off gently. "It's okay," she said. "I think it's okay now." Keanu extended his hand, and after a long pause, Maya took it. The next morning, they drove back to Los Angeles together, this time not as strangers but as allies. On the way, Maya shared ideas she'd been thinking about ever since she was fired. Ways to train new employees in emotional intelligence, how to spot bias in customer service, how to empower people to speak up without fear. Keanu listened like a student soaking up every word. For him, leadership wasn't about being the loudest, it was about knowing when to listen. When they arrived back at the dealership, the staff was waiting. Word had spread that Keanu had found Maya, and curiosity filled the air. When she stepped out of the car, some jaws dropped. A few looked guilty, others hopeful. But Maya didn't flinch. She stood beside Keanu, taller than before, her voice calm and clear as she addressed them. "Some of you knew what happened to me," she said. "Some of you watched. Some of you stayed silent. And some of you weren't even here yet. But today isn't about blame. It's about change, and we're going to change this place together." The applause started slowly, but it grew into something real, something earned. Inside the dealership, a conference room had already been set up. Keanu had asked Alina to prepare the space for a new beginning. Whiteboards, notebooks, coffee, and a printed sign taped to the wall that simply read, "This is where the heart returns." The next few hours were filled with raw conversation. Stories of pain, of missed opportunities, of regret, but also stories of hope, of second chances, of good people who stayed because they believed things could get better. And Maya, with her quiet strength, led every session, her voice no longer shaky but firm, her ideas shaping the very fabric of what the dealership would become. Keanu sat quietly in the corner for most of it, watching the way people responded to her, how they leaned in, how their eyes lit up when they were asked to share their ideas. This was what leadership looked like. This was the dream he had started with, finally becoming real. But just as things began to take shape, a new issue emerged, one that would test everything they had begun to build. Oliver entered the room and whispered into Keanu's ear. "Sir, we have a situation. One of the customers we contacted about a fraudulent transaction is threatening legal action. He claims he was sold a damaged car and the report was forged. He wants a meeting. Now." Keanu stood slowly, nodding. "Who's the customer?" Oliver glanced down at the tablet. "A judge." Keanu's heart skipped. The stakes had just risen again. And this time they weren't just fighting for the heart of a business. They were fighting for its survival. The judge's verdict, the meeting room grew still as Keanu looked at Oliver, his eyes sharp with focused tension. The word judge echoed in his mind, not because of fear, but because of the weight it carried. This wasn't just a customer with a complaint. This was someone with influence, someone whose voice could echo far beyond the walls of the dealership. And if his claims were true, if a forged report had been used to sell a damaged car, it wasn't just a scandal, it was criminal. The customer, Judge Malcolm DeVore, had already arrived and was waiting in one of the dealership's private lounges. Tall, sharply dressed, and carrying the unmistakable air of someone used to being in control, he sat with his arms crossed, a file resting on his knee. When Keanu entered, the judge didn't rise. He simply looked up with the hard, evaluating gaze of someone who had spent decades determining truth from lies. "Mr. Reeves," the judge said calmly, his voice low and firm. "I appreciate the swiftness of your response. I'll be honest with you. I had no intention of taking this public yet, but your assistant's message suggested you might be ready to make things right. I'm here to find out if that's true." Keanu nodded, choosing not to sit just yet. "You have my full attention, Judge, and whatever happened, I promise you it will be dealt with transparently." Judge DeVore opened the file and handed it to Keanu. Inside were photos of a luxury SUV, initially flawless in its listing but now clearly wrecked underneath. One image showed rust behind the door panels, another revealed a hairline crack along the frame near the axle. The inspection report attached To the sale had been stamped as certified flawless, signed electronically by a name Keanu instantly recognized. Vince. I purchased this vehicle for my daughter, the judge said, his voice tightening. A gift for her graduation. The same week she got it, she was almost killed when the brakes gave out on a mountain road. The mechanic who examined it afterward said the vehicle had been in a severe collision and was never properly repaired. When we checked the dealership's records, the inspection logs had been cleaned. Only after speaking to one of your former mechanics, who bravely gave me a printed version of the original report, did we learn the truth. Keanu's stomach turned cold. It wasn't just about stolen money or rude behavior anymore. Someone's life had been placed at risk, and Vince hadn't just been unethical. He had been dangerous. I am truly sorry, Keanu said, lowering the folder, not just for the damage but for the trust that was broken. What happened is inexcusable, and I take full responsibility for the systems that allowed it. The judge looked at him, expression unreadable. I came prepared to file a formal lawsuit. I have the legal grounds, but I'll give you one chance to convince me otherwise, not with words, but with action. Keanu didn't flinch. Then give me 72 hours, not to delay justice, but to begin repairing what was broken. I'll give you full access to our audit findings and every internal document related to that sale, and I'll bring the mechanic who signed the real report into this room so you can hear it directly. Judge DeVore studied him for a moment longer, then slowly nodded. 72 hours, that's all you get. When the judge left, the weight in the room lingered like smoke. Keanu sat down finally, pinching the bridge of his nose as he processed what just unfolded. Maya entered quietly, having seen part of the exchange from the hallway. Was that him? She asked. Yes, Keanu replied. And he's not wrong. We failed him. We almost cost someone their life. Maya sat beside him. But he gave you a chance. Yes, Keanu said again, more quietly. And now we can't waste it. They worked through the night. The audit team pulled records, cross-referenced inspection reports, and recovered archived footage from the service bay the week of the sale. Maya tracked down the mechanic, a man named Luis, who had quit 6 months earlier after repeated clashes with Vince. When they found him, he was working at a small garage in Pasadena, still wearing the same uniform from his days at the dealership, except the name patch was torn and faded. Keanu met with Luis personally. He didn't show up in a suit or with bodyguards. Just himself and Maya. Luis, he said as they sat down in the garage office. I'm here because we need the truth, and because someone almost died because of a lie. Luis looked at him, cautious but not hostile. You're talking about the SUV, aren't you? Yes, Keanu said. Did you write a report that flagged it as dangerous? I did, Luis replied. I found the damage the moment I popped the hood, but Vince told me not to upload it. Said he'd take care of the documentation. Next day the car was gone. I should have done more, but I needed the job. Keanu shook his head. You tried. It's Vince who buried it, not you. Luis exhaled slowly. I still have a copy. Printed it before I logged out just in case. With the original inspection report in hand and a signed statement from Luis, they returned to the dealership, racing against the ticking hours left on the judge's deadline. Alina compiled everything into a single binder: original report, forged version, transaction logs, email trails, and even internal messages between Vince and a few upper-level staff who had since been let go. It was a damning collection of evidence, but it was also a roadmap to healing. On the morning of the third day, Judge DeVore returned. This time, he was greeted not by a receptionist, but by Keanu himself, who walked him through everything, page by page, confession by confession. They sat across from each other for nearly 2 hours. When it was done, the judge closed the binder and sat quietly. This is more than I expected, he said. You didn't just investigate, you exposed your own company's flaws, even when it could hurt you. It was never about protecting myself, Keanu said. It was about protecting people. The judge gave a small, approving nod. I won't be filing a lawsuit. but you owe my daughter a personal apology. I'd like to meet her, Keanu said, and thank her for surviving something we never should have allowed. That afternoon, Keanu met the judge's daughter at a small cafe near the coast. She was bright, kind, and recovering from the trauma of the accident. When he apologized to her, it wasn't with fame or charm, it was with genuine humility, and she forgave him. But even as that chapter closed, a new challenge was brewing. That evening, Alina walked into Keanu's office, concern in her eyes. "We've been reviewing Vince's emails," she said. He wasn't working alone. Someone at corporate was helping him hide the losses. Someone high up. Keanu's jaw clenched. "Who?" he asked. Alina slid a file across the desk, and when Keanu saw the name, his eyes darkened. It wasn't just someone high up. It was someone Keanu had known for years. Someone he had once called a friend. The betrayal behind the curtain. The name on the file hit Keanu like a punch to the chest as he stared at the black letters printed across the top of the report. 100 memories flooded his mind. Late-night meetings over diner coffee, shared laughs during early business struggles, long conversations about ethics and integrity, and building something meaningful together. The name was Liam Radcliffe, not just a senior corporate advisor, but one of the first men Keanu had brought into the fold when Reeves Holdings expanded beyond film into business. Liam had been with him at the very beginning of the dealership's foundation, when it was still a dream written on cocktail napkins and scribbled legal pads. They had talked about revolutionizing the car-buying experience, about replacing manipulation with trust, replacing profits-only mindsets with community service and dignity. But now, this man, this trusted friend, had betrayed him. Keanu sat, in silence, the file open before him, his fingers gripping the edge of the desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. Across from him, Alina watched closely, letting the weight of the moment settle. Her voice was gentle but firm. "We've confirmed through email metadata, expense reports, and shared account logins. Liam authorized backdoor access to inventory, records, allowing Vince to mark up prices, hide red flags, and funnel funds into a ghost account. We traced the money trail. It leads to an offshore holding tied directly to Liam's private consultancy." The silence between them was thick and cold. Keanu had faced betrayal before, in Hollywood, in contracts, in personal friendships strained by fame. But this was different. This wasn't about ego or jealousy. This was someone deliberately sabotaging the mission they had built together. A man who once claimed to believe in the power of kindness had become the architect of quiet cruelty behind closed doors. Keanu stood slowly, methodically, and walked over to the window. Outside, the showroom floor buzzed softly with renewed energy. Mechanics were helping clients. Maya was leading a team in the training center. Claire was assisting an elderly veteran looking for a car for his grandson. The culture was beginning to shift. The heart was returning. But it wasn't safe yet. Not with Liam still in the shadows. "Where is he?" Keanu asked, his voice low. "In his downtown office," Alina replied. "He's still unaware we've uncovered his involvement." Keanu turned back toward her, his expression resolute. "Then he's about to find out." 2 hours later, Keanu stepped into a high-rise tower of glass and steel, a building he helped fund but rarely visited. The receptionist at the front desk looked up, startled. "Mr. Reeves, are you here for a scheduled meeting?" "No," he replied. "Tell Liam Keanu is here, and he's not leaving until they talk." Within minutes, Liam stepped out of the elevator on the 15th floor. He wore a custom-tailored suit, his hair immaculately styled, and a practiced smile on his face, the same smile he had worn during charity events, business expos, and press conferences. "Keanu," he said, arms open. "What a surprise." Keanu didn't smile, didn't move. He simply held up the file. The smile on Liam's face cracked ever so slightly. "We need to talk," Keanu said. "Now." They entered Liam's office, a sprawling corner suite with views of the city and a private bar stocked with expensive bottles. Keanu set the file on the glass table and flipped it open, letting the evidence speak first. As he slowly laid out the emails, the spreadsheets, the transaction logs, the forged entries, the fake shell company invoices, Liam's face shifted from casual charm to visible discomfort. His hands clasped, unclasped, then tightened into fists. "Can explain," he said finally, voice forced through a clenched jaw. "Don't," Keanu interrupted. "Don't insult either of us with lies." Liam's voice grew defensive. "You trusted me with autonomy. You told me to find ways to make the business sustainable. Not by bleeding people dry and endangering lives," Keanu said sharply. "This isn't about margins. This is about you deciding that the mission didn't matter anymore." Liam looked down, his mask of confidence slipping. "You don't understand. Things changed. Margins shrank. Competitors grew. Investors demanded faster returns. I did what I had to do." "No," Keanu replied quietly. "You did what was easiest. You did what protected your bonuses. Not the brand. Not the staff. Not the people. And you did it while looking me in the eye, pretending you still stood for everything we built." Liam exhaled, a bitter laugh escaping. "You always were too idealistic." "And you," Keanu said, his voice trembling with both anger and heartbreak, "were supposed to be better." He took the file, closed it, and stood. "Your access is revoked. Your contract is terminated. And if any of this money isn't returned, you'll be seeing it from the other side of a courtroom." Liam stood too, now red in the face. "You'd throw away years of friendship over this? You threw it away the moment you decided profit was more important than people," Keanu said. "Now live with the consequences." He turned and left, walking out not with rage but with resolve. By the next morning, Reeves Holdings released a public statement announcing Liam's termination, along with a transparent summary of the investigation. They promised full restitution to every defrauded customer, announced a new third-party ethics oversight committee, and elevated Maya into a formal leadership role as head of culture and values. Employees were given bonuses as a thank you for enduring difficult changes, and a brand new department was created, dedicated solely to community outreach, training programs, and support for underprivileged clients seeking vehicle financing. But, more than the policies or headlines, what changed most was the feeling. When customers entered the dealership now, they were greeted with sincerity. When someone in work boots came to look at a used truck, they were treated with the same care as someone test driving a Lamborghini. Keanu began visiting every week, listening, observing, mentoring. Not as a celebrity or boss, but as someone who cared enough to get his hands dirty. And one Saturday morning, as he walked the lot helping a teenager look for a first car, Maya approached him with a fresh printed sign in her hand. "Thought you might want to hang this yourself," she said, handing it to him. Keanu smiled as he unrolled it. It read, "This is a place where everyone matters. If you're reading this, you belong here." He climbed a small step ladder, gently taped the sign to the front window, and stepped back to admire it. Behind him, the staff watched. Some clapped, others simply nodded. The man who had been denied service at his own dealership had become its soul again, not through power, not through fame, but through humility, truth, and the courage to start over. And as the sun poured across the lot, Keanu turned, smiled, and said the words he now lived by. "Kindness isn't a marketing tool, it's the foundation. And if we ever forget that again, remind me."